Awesome. And we're live. Hello, everybody. So it's been a while. I've just been super busy, but a piece of news came across my attention last night, and then there's going to be more news about this tomorrow. This is related to the Kyle Rittenhouse case, and that is about his so-called best friend, his brother at the time of the trial, Dominic Black. So a little bit of a recap here, and let me go ahead and put the link to this article in the comments so people can see it as I reference it, because I'll be referencing it a lot. So let's go. Yeah, so for those of you who maybe don't remember or aren't sure, Dominic Black was Kyle Rittenhouse's best friend. They knew each other because Dominic was dating Kyle's little sister. He has an older sister and a younger sister. His younger sister's name is Mackenzie. And at the time of August 2020, I think Mackenzie was 15 or 16, and Dominic Black was 18, and Kyle Rittenhouse famously was 17. And because Dominic was dating Kyle's sister, he got to know Kyle, and they seem to have had something of a bromance. In the trial, they both testified that Kyle was basically seeing Dominic every day, was spending the night at Dominic's house, or vice versa. So they seemed like they were quite close. They'd known each other for 8 or 9 months prior to the events in August of 2020. And it was Dominic Black who actually purchased the gun that Kyle Rittenhouse used that night. Let's see if I can go here now and post these. Yes. All right, so I'm going to post a link to an AP article covering the latest right there, so you can see that. Okay, so the laws here are a little interesting in that Kyle, as a 17-year-old, couldn't buy an AR-15, but he could possess one legally. And though he could not have possessed something like a handgun, but he could possess an AR-15. So Kyle got his stimulus check, gave it to Dominic. Dominic spent it on an AR-15. Kyle had taken it shooting at least once before, and maybe only once before. They described one incident in detail, and it sounded like that may have been the only time. They go to Kenosha. Kyle gets attacked by first a crazy suicidal pedophile by the name of Joseph Rosenbaum, who, literally was suicidal. He had tried to kill himself just before, was running around and telling people to kill him that night. Attacks Kyle, chases after him, lays his hands on his guns. Had already threatened to kill him. Kyle shoots him. And then a mob forms attacking Kyle. The generous interpretation is they believed he was a mass shooter. The way he was acting and the way they were acting doesn't indicate that is true, but it is plausible that maybe some of them believe that, and he ends up shooting 2 more people, one of which he kills, and the other one he just blows their arm off. So Kyle gets charged with 2 counts of reckless homicide, 2 more counts of attempted reckless homicide. He also gets charged with being not a minor in possession, but somebody who was too young to have the gun, and also like a curfew violation. Now, Dominic Black, soon thereafter, is himself charged with 2 felony counts of providing a minor with a deadly weapon. The 2 counts are for the 2 deaths, and each count would potentially lead to 6 years in prison. So he was looking at potentially 12 years in prison for giving Kyle this gun. One thing that a lot of people mentioned, and I had mentioned as well, was could maybe Dominic get in trouble for a straw purchase. So straw purchase is where somebody goes and buys a gun for somebody who legally can't have a gun. It's a crime pretty much everywhere. Whenever you go to a gun store, there'll probably be some kind of sign somewhere saying to that effect. The problem is it was okay for Kyle to have a gun, right? So if Kyle had been a felon and Dominic Black had bought him an AR-15 and given that to him, that would have been a straw purchase. Kyle is allowed to possess a rifle, though, so that wouldn't have been a straw purchase. He's not allowed to possess a handgun. So if he had bought him a handgun and given it to him, he might have been prosecuted under a straw purchase, but that's not the case. So because Dominic and Kyle are both charged. Kyle was given restrictions on his bail to say that he can't talk to Dominic, which was interesting. And when the prosecution started their case, the very first person they had to testify, so the first person to testify in the actual trial, was Dominic Black. And it made a lot of sense in the sense that Dominic Black was right there when Kyle first got the gun. He's the one who brought him there that day. He's the one who brought him to the police station. Right there's nobody more involved other than the people that Kyle shot, who half of them can't give testimony because they're dead. So this whole time, Kyle's charged with all these massive crimes. He was looking at more than life in prison for these reckless homicides and these reckless endangerment causes. And at some point, and I did a whole video on this called The Coercion of Dominic Black. So you can watch that video, or you can just watch his testimony in the trial. All the testimony is broken down, so you can watch everyone's testimony. Dominic Black on the stand. I mean, you can tell this guy is terrified. He was just a normal 18, 19-year-old guy, kind of into guns, didn't like seeing his town burned down. And next thing you know, he's looking at 12 years in prison because his friend fired a gun in self-defense and killed 2 people who were attacking him. Dominic was clearly very afraid, and there's testimony given in the trial, and there could have been more. I'm kind of surprised they didn't dig into it more, that he talked to Mackenzie, his girlfriend, Kyle's sister, about what story he's going to tell to try and protect himself. What is he going to say to get himself out? And in the course of the testimony that he gave to the court, at some point, Binger became very strangely antagonistic towards him and started to kind of very overtly threaten him. Are you not under threat of prosecution? Aren't you facing a lot of time? And if you watch, it's quite stark. Again, I did a whole video just about that. You can watch the entire testimony. I think it's about an hour and 15 minutes long, so it's definitely worth watching. And I speculated then, and I've heard other speculation by others, that there may have been some kind of quid pro quo, and that Dominic was supposed to implicate Kyle in more ways than he was. As I just had found this out yesterday, although I'd seen it originally. At some point, Binger asks him if he saw him point his rifle at anybody else. And Dominic said no, he never saw that happen. And right after that, Binger starts to say, to basically threaten him. So there's speculation that maybe that was the intent, that he was supposed to implicate Kyle as threatening and provoking people, because later the prosecution tried to build a story that Kyle was provoking people by pointing his gun at people. Regardless, the testimony that Black gave didn't really hurt Kyle at all. There was nothing in there that they couldn't have figured out without his testimony. And he gave it presumably to please the prosecutor, to get what's called consideration. But during the trial, did the defense ask Black if prosecutor offered him any deals? I don't think explicitly. He did point out that the defense did ask, the defense had reached out to Black's attorneys because they wanted to talk to Black before trial, and Black's attorneys apparently never told that to Black, or at least that's what Black said on the stand. The defense basically allowed it to be implied that this guy is being coerced. This guy is being threatened with really serious prosecution. So how serious can we take his testimony? Basically that kind of thing. So what's kind of sad about this is then Kyle gets exonerated, right? He gets found not guilty of all charges, so he completely walks. He's completely free. He gets his bail money back, everything. Dominic is not famous, right? A lot of people hate Kyle Rittenhouse, but also like half the country thinks he's a hero. And the half that hate him, a lot of them are finally realizing that they got it wrong. It's amazing how many left-wing sources I've seen have come back and said, wow, that we got that wrong. We were misled. Not all of them. Many of them are still completely think he killed black people and whatnot. But, for Anna Kasparian on the Young Turks to recant and say she was wrong about a lot of things is stunning. Jimmy Dore did a couple of videos about it too, where he's like, I had no idea what the truth was here, and the case is a self-defense case. He stands out as one of the leftists who's wrong the least, I guess. But Dominic is not famous, and Dominic, if anything, people thought of him as a bit of a Judas, although I don't know what he did to hurt Kyle in the course of his testimony. But just before final arguments in the Rittenhouse case, the charges that Kyle was a minor in possession of a deadly weapon were dropped by the judge. Now, in the article, they take it say, well, it's thrown out. They make it sound like the judge was favorable to Kyle and is like, I'm just going to throw out charges. No, the law is poorly written and it's a little bit confusing. But anybody who knows how popular hunting is in the Midwest knows that 16 and 17-year-olds can have rifles. And so the law that says that a person under 18 can't have, quote unquote, a deadly weapon. Deadly weapon is not just, it doesn't mean a random thing, right? It doesn't just mean what you intuit it to mean. It's specified. So a deadly weapon includes things like certain types of knives, brass knuckles, handguns, but it excludes rifles and shotguns above a certain length, right? So you can't have a short-barreled rifle or a short-barreled shotgun, but you can have a normal length rifle and a normal length shotgun. And this was known by the prosecution and the judge. And in I think the day before closing arguments, the judge just asked the prosecution, is the gun too short? Is the gun not a legal length? And Assistant District Attorney Krause just kind of sheepishly put his head down and goes, it is of a legal length. It's not a pistol. It's not a short-barreled shotgun or a short-barreled rifle. And so Judge Schrader said, okay, this is dismissed. But what's interesting for that, it helped for two reasons. In Kyle's case, it helped to say he wasn't breaking the law when he was walking around with a gun. If you're walking around with a gun and he's in violation of this law, then it's easier to maybe say he's provocative and he doesn't have a right of self-defense. So that was great. Also, one fewer charges. But this also had big ramifications for Dominic Black's case because he's getting charged for providing a weapon to a minor, a dangerous weapon to a minor. And now it said, well, actually, it's not a dangerous weapon. Kyle could legally have this gun, and so therefore Dominic Black giving it to him is not a crime. So a lot of people, myself included, thought they should throw out the charges. And a few weeks later, Binger offered him a plea deal where instead of pleading to both, he would plead to one count, but that's still 6 years and a major felony. And so, and I should have cut right to the chase. I feel like a bad YouTuber for bearing the lead here. But as of Friday, Dominic signed a plea deal. He'll plead no contest to a county ordinance violation of, what is the term? I'm going to say this wrong. Corrupting a minor, corrupting a child. Blah, blah, blah. Let me get this right. Yeah. Oh, they don't even go into the... Oh, contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Okay. So Dominic Black says he'll plead no contest to one count of contributing to the delinquency of a minor, which carries, it's not a felony, it's a misdemeanor, and it carries a $2,000 penalty. No jail time, nothing like that. And a lot of people are speculating that on Monday, when they bring this before the judge, that the judge will just dismiss everything. He's completely innocent and he shouldn't be charged with anything, so it should be thrown out. That would be the best. Even if that does happen, he's out many tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. I believe he's had 3 or 4 lawyers. He did have a GoFundMe that was able to raise tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but nothing like Kyle. Kyle raised millions of dollars, and Kyle is now, one of the most famous people in the country and is doing like a lecture, like a interview circuit around the country. Someone's already asked about that. So bravo to Dominic. He was clearly charged so that the prosecution could use him as a witness, so they could threaten him and make him do things. You could tell if you watch the trial, there are witnesses who, are facing no charges whatsoever, and they were able to talk back to the prosecutor. They didn't have to worry too much. The ones who have charges against them, they can either be used to be completely silenced. So one of the most important individuals who we still don't have a resolution for is Joshua Ziminski. Joshua Ziminski was there with Rosenbaum all night. Joshua Ziminski was constantly brandishing a handgun. And Joshua Ziminski was right there at the critical moment when Rosenbaum started chasing Kyle Rittenhouse, and was indeed the man who raised his handgun in the air and fired the first shot approximately 1 or 2 seconds before Kyle shot Rosenbaum. And the prosecution has even alleged that their entire case for why Kyle doesn't have a right to self-defense is because he provocatively aimed his gun at Joshua Ziminski, and that Rosenbaum was thus attacking him to defend Joshua Ziminski. Well, if that's going to be the argument, maybe they should have Joshua Ziminski come and testify, since he's the one who's was aggressed against, and he's the one who fired a gun in the air, blah, blah, blah. But Joshua Ziminski was charged with arson. His trial was set for January, just like Dominic's was set for January, so after Kyle's. And then Ziminski pleaded the fifth, which means he can't testify in this case. Now, the prosecution could offer him immunity and say, yes, we'll let you can testify in this case, and if you have immunity, nothing you say can be used against you in your trial. But they didn't do that because they didn't want him to testify, which is pretty much proof that the prosecution thinks he has exculpatory evidence. So will be interesting to see what happens to Joshua Ziminski. My guess is his charges are going to get dropped, or he's going to get a slap on the wrist, or something absolutely minor. But the same kind of coercion was being used on Dominick Black. It's just that Dominic, his charges were completely baseless. Well, if Kyle could legally have the gun, how could he legally not have it? And I'm actually wondering if the delinquency to a minor is not a reference to Kyle and the gun. It might actually be a reference to Mackenzie, because Mackenzie was definitely a minor, and this is something that popped out to me. Dominic was 18 and Mackenzie was 15, and they were boy and girlfriend. Don't know what they did or didn't do. Could have been completely, a Mormon courtship, and they also had Dominic's phone and Kyle's phone. So one wonders if there might have been some statutory stuff in there. But if there was, they would have charged him with it. So maybe not. But the delinquency of a minor might be about Mackenzie and not Kyle. Be interesting to see. But hopefully it gets completely thrown out. Like this guy's out tens of thousands. His reputation's been ruined. His face, his mugshot's been all over the place. And the way this was portrayed prior to the Rittenhouse verdict was, this is the guy who, is supplying the white supremacists with the weapons to kill. And that's going to hurt his prospects probably for the rest of his life. And unlike Kyle, he's not famous, right? He is not have all these people. What about the prosecutors and jumping? Kyle said in an interview that they did know. First of all, they found out during the defense found out who he was during the trial. But it's also apparently come out, Kyle said in one of the interviews, that the prosecution knew before that, that Jump Kick Man has priors, that Jump Kick Man has felonies or is in the judicial system, and that he approached the prosecution saying he wanted to testify with the idea that he would get some kind of immunity for his other stuff, and they said no, which is interesting because Jump Kick Man, why they wouldn't want. Yeah, Jump Kick Man is very lucky he's not dead, because Kyle Rittenhouse fired 2 rounds at him at point blank range. In fact, one of the things we learned in the trial is that Kyle fired the rounds after Jump Kick Man. I mean, less than a second after Jump Kick Man absolutely kicked him. And Kyle's also lucky because Jump Kick Man is the only person he shot at who is not white. Everyone else he shot is white. He killed 2 white guys and he blew off another white guy's arm. If he had actually, like, he was getting accused of killing a black guy this entire time. And if he had shot that guy in the head, I mean, if he had just been a little bit over, the bullet would have gone right there and out the top of his head, and he would have had a black victim. So now he could say he doesn't have any black victims. So it does seem like the prosecution did know who he was. It would have been hard for them not to have known, and they did not want him to testify for probably the same reasons they didn't want Zeminski to testify. Or among similar reasons anyway. So yeah, the prosecutorial misconduct here just goes on and on and on and on and on. Yeah, so they're both lucky. Kyle's lucky he missed that guy, and that guy's lucky he didn't get shot in the head. Now, also to your earlier question, Jared, the Binger made a point when he was examining Black to say, "Did I offer you any deals? Did I tell you to say anything?" And Dominic said, "No, you just told me just to tell the truth." But it seemed kind of like a canned line, like what's the phrase? The lady doth protest too much. Why are you going out of your way to say how you're not docking? You're just having to be honest. We already had another witness, Nathan DeBruin, say that who has no charges against him, right? So he can't really be coerced. Who said that when he went to visit Binger and Krause, that they wanted him to change his statements. They wanted him to identify people who he didn't know. So they had images that he'd taken, and they said, "Well, this person is this. This is Joshua Zeminski," and he's like, "Well, I don't know who that is." I'm like, "Well, it's Joshua Zeminski. Do you want to now say that?" He goes, "I don't want to change my statement based on what you said." And in trial, he argued with Krause. It's actually quite a funny moment where it sounds like by his testimony that they're trying to get him to change what his statements, and he got a lawyer, and then Krause is saying, no. If the prosecution did know, I think the prosecutorial misconduct should be brought to the Wisconsin bar. Yeah, absolutely. And there's other things, Jared. Of course, the stuff with the video, where the evidence fairy just showed up middle trial and gave them something. That video that they gave the defense was edited. It was fewer number of pixels. It was a different frame rate. They had clearly changed it. The file was created at a different time, and Krause fucking lied, because when the defense brought this up, they said this has been edited and changed, and Krause said, "I don't know anything about how to edit videos. I'm not a magician. I don't know anything about tech." But then later that day, when they mirrored their screen up on the big screen, you can see right on the thing that they've got video editing software on their laptop. I forget, one of them is called Handbrake and another one. So Krause is there saying, "I don't know how to do that," but he's got Handbrake on his computer that same day, right? And people wouldn't have caught it if people hadn't been watching the trial and it hadn't been live streamed like this. So people are asking about Kyle's interviews. I think they're fine. It's kind of a weird, I don't know what he's going for. I mean, he can do whatever he wants. I think he has a very big decision to make, and that is, does he want to embrace the fact that he's famous and kind of run with it? Or does he want to try and, put this all behind him? And to do that, he might have to change his name. He's going to have to move. He's going to have to change his appearance, something that he alluded to in some of the interviews. He'll lose weight, grow a beard, whatever it takes. He says he really wants to go to college. He says he really wants to be a lawyer. If he really wants to be a lawyer, then he will have to go to college, and that's going to be difficult because there's, any college he goes to, there's going to be some portion of the student body who's going to protest just everything about him all the time. ASU protests, people were saying things like he's a white supremacist, he's a murderer, and God bless any school that will take him, but it's going to be tricky for him. So I don't know. The tour seems to make it seem like he wants to be famous, but it could just be he wants to get his side of the story out there. He wants to be able to talk about these things. Kyle's a man of his age, so he's been watching all these videos. So, when he goes to be on Steven Crowder, he's been watching Steven Crowder, right? He's followed a lot of these people, so for him, it's a chance for him to get to meet like famous people. He strikes me as very intelligent, very soft-spoken, very level-headed, and I think we can see that just that night. The fact that he didn't kill 3 or 4 more people. You know, there were multiple people who were mobbing him with melee weapons, where he's already been concussed and attacked, and he doesn't shoot them. And he, I think, could have done that all day long, and that would have been 100% a reasonable person would have done that. And the fact that he didn't, maybe he was just like blind or whatever. It's possible. You know, this is similar to the fact that he shot Grosskreutz in the bicep. You know, people, wow, that's an amazing shot. It was just dumb luck. I mean, he'll be the first to tell you he's not a tactical wizard when it comes to guns. So I wish that the people who interviewed him had asked more questions. We got some details that were good that I liked, but you know, a lot of it was just kind of shooting the shit, you know, which is fine. Take a lesson and lay low. Well, maybe he hasn't done an interview in a few weeks, I believe. He did like a flurry for 2 or 3 weeks, and now it seems to have been kind of abated, and maybe that's intentional. You know, there's other things too. It seems like there's likely going to be a lot of civil litigation. He or his mom are going to probably be suing for defamation. It's going to be hard for Kyle because he was charged with serious crimes. So it's very hard to win a defamation suit when you've been charged. It's not like Nick Sandmann. Nick Sandmann literally didn't do anything, right? He just stood there and, you know, people are calling him a white supremacist, blah, blah, blah. Kyle was charged with double homicide, right? So you have way more leeway to say stuff. I've read articles to the extent that his mom has a much better case because one of the things that was reported ad nauseum was that his mom drove him across state lines with a gun. You know, and she did not, the gun was never in her house or in her possession, never in her car. She didn't drive him there that night, and that's all false. So she might have some good claims. Yeah. So, and also, you know, the stuff with like the January 6th people, kind of similar in that, um, you know, if you, the way Tucker Carlson is reporting, you know, we've got a couple of the ringleaders, the people who are really pushing people to go into the Capitol, right? They're taking people who walked into the Capitol and took selfies. They're getting like 30 years, 40 years, solitary confinement. They're really hitting them with everything, right? And then the ringleaders weren't charged with anything, right? Oh, so the lady who walked in, she's a terrorist, but the guy waving them in with a microphone saying, everyone go in, that person's not getting charged. And after it was reported and their names were put out there, and Tucker Carlson made a big deal about it, and Revolver News wrote their great piece on it, then and only then, some of those guys got charged. Now, they didn't get taken into custody, and they got charged with really minor crimes, but by charging them with something, those guys can now plead the fifth, and now they won't be available to testify in the defense cases for anybody else, right? So the government is using its power to silence witnesses who could have exculpatory evidence. And they did it in the Rittenhouse case. They did it with Joshua Zeminski. They did it by not identifying Jump Kick Man, if that's indeed the case. And just one of the many powers that they have and that they're completely willing to use. I think the interviews might be a net positive for him because they're definitely more intelligent. Yeah. And he also got a chance to say things like, I support BLM, you know, so all these people who are attacking him, what are they supposed to do with that? He just lied. Yeah. So in an earlier stream, you mentioned that you heard the Ahmaud Arbery case was being misrepresented in the media. Did you ever follow up with the case? No, it was already over, and so I didn't watch it live. Also, you couldn't watch it live. The way that I had heard it, a couple problems was basically the judge said the jury could interpret the law, which is not their job. All that would be a FIJA argument. And the other thing was Arbery, the police were looking for him apparently, or somebody like him. So it wasn't just a case of there's a black dude, he's suspicious, or he's jogging. He's not a jogger. And apparently the police were asking people in the area to look for somebody like him or him specifically. Don't quote me on that. So yeah, I don't know it very well though, so I'm not going to go farther than that. Kyle isn't a nut like Zimmerman, but I wish he'd take a lesson in lay low. But the other thing, I thought about this a lot because people compare the the Rittenhouse case with the Zimmerman case, and there's a couple really big differences. Like the biggest one, I think, is that Kyle's was all caught on video, and so with Zimmerman was the right call. There's a lot of evidence in the Zimmerman case. We have Zimmerman's testimony. There was a neighbor who witnessed it, whose last name was Good, who called 911. There is audio of the 911 call, and you can hear Zimmerman screaming in the background. And there's a lot of physical evidence on Zimmerman and on Trayvon Martin, and it all kind of matches, right? There's no incongruity there, and it matches the story that Zimmerman gave, and it matches a plausible self-defense case, which is why initially he wasn't charged with anything, and it wasn't until Obama made a big stink about it for political reasons that it became a political trial. All that being the case, though, we don't have video, so it is possible that there's some missing context that would implicate Zimmerman, right? It is possible that he did something provocative. It's possible that he had some kind of confrontation with Trayvon, and he quote unquote started it in a way, and that really it wasn't self-defense, that he picked a fight with somebody because he knew he was armed and he could handle it, and and it just so happened that the way it went down, the physical evidence made it look like it was self-defense. Okay, so the barrier, the bar is beyond a reasonable doubt. That wasn't the case with him, so like totally that was the correct verdict. He should have been found not guilty, but we don't know for sure. And so I don't know. Zimmerman could have done something really weird there, and so that was the right verdict, but I wouldn't go out and say Zimmerman's definitely innocent. He probably is, but we don't know for sure. With Kyle, everything was on video. There was so much video that it was like there would have had to have been something extremely unlikely in some very small scintilla gap of our knowledge, right? So in Kyle's case, it was much more, he's innocent. This is like textbook. I don't know he's on his ass. He's getting cornered. He's getting chased by a person who's threatened him, by a person with a violent past. Not that Kyle would know that, but he's demonstrating all of that night in spades. And so it was different for me, just the fact that I don't want to come up and defend Zimmerman so much when I wasn't there and I can't see. I can listen to the call. I've listened to the call. I've listened to the testimony. The eyewitness wrote a whole book. I think it's titled Witness. So I'm confident that that's the right case, but I don't know 100%. Whereas with Kyle, it's like, this is 100%, man. I remember thinking, we don't know exactly what happened before Kyle started running, so maybe he went and was like, I'm going to go kill a whole bunch of people unless you stop me. But if anything short of that, he's running away, he's disengaged, right? Even if he had been provocative, if you run away, you're disengaging, right? I knew Zimmerman was getting off, never should have been charged. And indeed, he wasn't charged until Obama made a big stink about it. And Ben Crumb got involved and all that. And that case also, if you watch my video on the Trayvon hoax, there's a whole thing there where the prosecution swapped out a witness. I'm not going to talk about it here because I did a whole video, but like, Jump Kick Man. Read any good books lately? Yeah. Catching Fire, about the role of cooking in human evolution, On What Hath God Wrought, history of the 19th century up to 1848. Stalin's War, A People's Tragedy, about the Russian Revolution. I'm actually reading another book on the Bernie Goetz case, the self-defense case in New York City from 1984. Interesting case. I was going to read that before the Rittenhouse trial, but didn't get around to it. So, yeah. So the Zimmerman thing, there's a couple things. I mean, it's over for Kyle. It should be over for Dominic come Monday morning. Either way, he's either going to pay a $2,000 fine, or the judge is going to say just throw out everything and he's going to completely walk. Either one. I mean, it's funny. Like, Kyle's actually going to probably more than break even here, because he's famous and he's intelligent. I think he's going to be able to parlay his fame into something, you know. I mean, he's able to demonstrably raise millions of dollars. It's true that a lot of people hate him. It's also true he's a hero to millions of people, rightly or wrongly. So Dominic is getting. He wasn't charged with as much, but at the end of the day, neither one of them's going to do time. But he got charged with very serious crimes, and doesn't have the fame, doesn't have the ability to raise money, anything like that, doesn't have the support. He's not going to get invited to go speak all these places, although there may be a couple places that want to talk to him, but it's not going to be, he's not going to be able to parlay it into major fame in the way that Kyle did, or could, or should, or will. So for him, this was just all awful. And it does seem like Kyle was asked if they're still friends, and he said that they are. I know that he's not dating Mackenzie anymore, though, so. Whatever happened to the case where your coworker was charged with kidnapping a hooker with a Mosin Nagant? Oh, God, that was like 10 years ago, literally at this point. Yeah, so I'll relay that story. I had just started working in the oil industry, and the first place that I really worked for like an extended period was West Virginia, and I had worked there for about 6 or 7 months, and that's where I learned how to do the oil field stuff. And after about 6 months, my boss wanted to move me to Utah, and I was reluctant to go because I was just getting used to working in one spot, and I hadn't been to Utah since I was a child. At the same time, I was like, well, if you're sending me to Utah, who's going to take my place in West Virginia? Because they still had work in West Virginia. And they had actually hired somebody who lived in Grand Junction, Colorado, which is right by Utah. It's like 20 miles from the border. And they said this guy, he has some geology training at like community college, but no experience. And the place in Utah, they only want experienced people. So he can't work there, but he could work in West Virginia. So I drive out to Utah, and I'm talking to my former coworker now. So we always work in two-man teams. So when I was in West Virginia, there was a day guy, and I was the night guy. And when I left, this guy named Brian was coming to become the night guy to take my place. And so I go to Utah, and I talk to my old day guy, and I'm like, how's it going? He goes, well, your replacement is in prison. So this replacement guy drives out to West Virginia. He gets with my old coworker. They get a new job. They set up all of our equipment, which usually takes about a day and a half. They get everything set up, and the guy in charge of the oil rig, which is referred to as the company man says, hey, we're not going to be ready for a day or two, so y'all can just leave your stuff here. That's, fine. By the way, it doesn't happen too often in the oil field, so it's like, oh, wow, you get a weekend unexpectedly. So they go into the local town. They go to a strip club, which the day guy that I worked with was, he was always getting hookers and whatnot. And they go back to the hotel, and the new guy, whose name was Brian goes to get some cigarettes, and he comes back, and somehow he sees her purse open and can see his belongings in it, like his credit card and what he interpreted to be his cash, although I don't know how he would know it was his cash. But apparently, though, there wasn't any dispute about the fact that she had apparently robbed him while he was gone. But Brian, being Brian, had brought a Mosin Nagant World War II Soviet rifle with him. He goes into the hotel room, and there in the bathroom, she's sucking his cock, and he busts down the door, points the gun at her, and tells her that she's citizen arrested. He's arresting her, for being a whore and robbing him. And he should have just kicked her out, and that would have been that. But he got dumb and called the cops. And the cops showed up and arrested him because he, robbed her and, held her up at gunpoint. So it gets time, blah, 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 where the prosecutor basically goes to him and says, so Brian's saying, I didn't do anything wrong. She robbed me. I was citizen arresting her. So, I want to plead innocent. So the prosecutor says, I think he was charging him with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon or something like that. It was serious, like a felony. And Brian said he was going to fight it. And so the prosecutor says, okay, so if you're going to do that, then the charge is going to be kidnapping because you held her against her will. And the mandatory sentence for kidnapping in West Virginia is life. All right. So if you decide you want to fight this, then you risk life in prison. Boom. So, and Brian was, he had a history. He'd been a meth addict before, but at this point he'd been domesticated. He had a wife. He had a couple kids. I've really never seen a guy who was that dominated by his woman. She completely controlled his life, all his money, but it was to his benefit, I would say. So he pled guilty to the lesser charge, to the aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He got sentenced to like 18 months or something like that. And it was kind of shitty because by then I had gone back to West Virginia and I was the day and he was my night hand. So I would work 12 hours in the day. He'd work 12 hours at night. We'd have about an hour on either side where we talked with each other and got caught up and, let each other know what was going on. He was a good worker, by the way. He's somebody I felt like I could trust, and he never did wrong. I mean, he was kind of dumb. He was clearly not educated, but like, I didn't feel he could learn. He learned how to do the stuff well enough that like I didn't lose sleep when I was gone. But the day of his sentencing, which, his attorneys told him you'll probably get probation and a tether and blah, blah, blah. So, I'm like, all right. And our company, our boss flew his wife in from Colorado to go to the sentencing. And so he was on bail, on parole or whatever, during this time. So he's working. There was no trial because he pled. And then during sentencing, I'm like, I'll see you tonight. And then 6 p.m. comes and he's not there. 7 p.m. comes, he's not there. I start making calls. We had really, really bad cell service out there. It was in West Virginia. It was terrible. But eventually, maybe 3 hours later, I was able to talk to my boss. He said, oh, you didn't hear. So the judge said, I don't want a foreigner out there taking jobs from us West Virginia people. Now, foreigner being somebody from Colorado, right? He's not like Asian or anything. And they sent him to prison, and I think he served 9 months, I believe. And I worked with him again when he got done. We had to hire somebody to replace him, and none of the people who replaced him were any good. They were all trash. We ended up getting rid of all those people. But whenever he finished, they let him out, and then he just really needed to work, right? He had legal bills. His family kind of depended on him, and he just went back to work, and I worked with him for another couple years after that. So that's what happened. Are there any examples of Congress being a no-fly list? I don't know, but congressmen have been thrown in prison. Congressmen have been exiled. I mean, Lincoln did that to Congressman Vallandigham from Ohio. All the butternut Democrats from like the Midwest were accused of treason. A lot of them were exiled, or arrested. A lot of them were arrested, like in Maryland. If they didn't swear an oath to the North, they were arrested and thrown in prison. So I don't know about nowadays. There's so many people on the list that probably. Are you aware of Yaron Brook? I am aware of Yaron Brook. I've listened to him a couple times, but I'm not an objectivist, so it's not my cup of tea. Dominic Black. We'll be interested to see what happens on Monday. I hope the judge just completely throws it out. If he the other thing I should say about this too, the contributing to a delinquency of a minor, if you read it, it's so incredibly vague. It's a catch-all, right? And I actually know a lot of gay guys, for instance, are really reluctant to do anything with minors. And I don't mean like sex. I mean speak with them at any level because of laws like this. because they seem to have been designed to be really vague, right? So this isn't if you like have statutorily rape somebody, they're not going to charge you with delinquency of a minor, because then they would just charge you with stat rape. So this is something that's like, it's super vague. You did something that made a minor delinquent, but they didn't actually have, it even specifies that they don't actually have to have done anything. So I think most people are assuming this is because he gave a gun to Kyle and Kyle was a minor, even though Kyle could legally have that gun and walk around with that gun. And you know, the only things Kyle had done wrong was drive without a driver's license, which apparently he's not even going to get charged with. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was about Mackenzie, his sister, Dominick's ex, because, which, by the way, so if you watch where Kyle gets the verdict read to him, you can see Mackenzie sitting behind him. Are you a fan of Ryan Dawson? Yes. Do you think some people contribute too much to Israel? When you say contribute too much to Israel, what do you mean? You mean attribute too much to Israel or contribute too much to Israel? I mean, the answer to both is yes, though. So, look, I don't support Zionism. People, it's sad to say, but I do believe, you know, the Likud is right to the point where they say facts on the ground. So I don't think the Jews in the Levant are going to go anywhere anytime soon, and I wouldn't even wish that they would. I just wish that they would stop oppressing everybody around them, and definitely the United States should stop subsidizing them. That being said, and Ryan Dawson is, I'll quote him. You know, there's people who, if their coffee is cold, they'll think it's because a Jew came and blew on it, right? So there's people who just blame everything on the Jews, or even specifically the Zionists, and that's ridiculous. You know, I have my problems with Zionisms, and I have my critique of Judaism, whatever form. There's many different types, and they're not all the same. But they're not the fault. Not everything is their fault. They're not secretly in control of everything. Do they have a lot of influence and power? Yes, collectively, but, you know, you can collectivize any group and say, well, that's a lot of influence and a lot of power. So, you know, do they bat above their weight? Yeah, I think that's true. They do. But they're not behind everything. And there were a lot of problems here before the Zionists or the Jews were, you know, contributing to anything at all. Are you following the Chandler Halderson trial? No. Oh, his parents wanted him to get a job and he allegedly killed his parents and chopped them up. No, that's not terrible. Am I wrong? Because it seems like rapists, etc., don't get harsh enough punishments. Well, I don't know statistically what their punishments are, and also rapist includes a lot of things, right? So when people think of rape, they imagine, you know, a coercive exchange where you drag a woman into a hallway, an alleyway, and forcibly have sex with her. But rapist also includes stature rape, you know, and so that could be a 17-year-old who has sex with an 18-year-old who's their boyfriend, and who they subsequently then get married and have kids. But that could also be stature rape. That's also a rapist, right? Like, there was a girl. She's 2 years older than me. In my high school, she's really smart, in band, in choir, was in tennis, and a really good looking girl. And her tennis coach she was a senior and he was just finished college. So he was like 21 or maybe 22 when she was 18. And, you know, when she was still in high school and still on the team, people had noticed that they were very, very close. And then as soon as she graduated and turned 18, they started dating, and they got married. And now they're 20 years into a marriage. They've got 3 kids, right? But it would not surprise me at all if he statutorily raped her, right? And, you know, there are people, and I get in trouble for this on my channel. You know, I've people like, really, this is the one thing I guarantee of all the positions I have, this is the one that's going to, you know, be the most anathema, is that, like, there are times when really that's not so bad. Right? Like, now, there are times when it is that bad, right? 9-year-olds can't consent, so you can't have consensual sex with a 9-year-old. I'll say that, you know, or a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. But it starts to get more and more gray once puberty starts. And, where exactly you draw the line is a place that requires nuance and debate. And I would say that a lot of people are getting a lot of harsh treatment for stuff that's ethically really not that bad, right? Let's say, for instance, that Dominic and Mackenzie were having sex. Dominic's 18, Mackenzie's 15. That would probably, I don't think the age of consent is not 15 anywhere in the United States, as far as I'm aware, which would mean that almost guaranteed would be stats rape, and yet they're both teenagers. Like, is it really that evil compared to what people think of as rape? So yeah. It is funny, though, how you can't even bring up foreign aid with Ben Shapiro. Ben called Ron Paul anti-Semitic. Yeah, well, I like Ben Shapiro, but he's completely a Zionist, and and the thing is, he's immersed in it enough that he can really do the talking points really well. Not that I think, but I have never seen him really debate a really good. He doesn't ever have Norman Finkelstein or Scott Horton or anybody like that, and he never will. He's got to just say that you're a Hamas toting, leftist. I'm talking about adults with children, like 30-year-olds with literal children. I've seen so many cases where the punishments aren't harsh. I don't know. I mean, sometimes they're super harsh and sometimes they're not, and I don't know statistically where they are. And actually, I'll be honest, I don't know where it should be. The idea. Another side topic to this is I don't believe in like punitive justice. I believe in restorative justice, right? So I think that if you have committed a tort, if you've harmed somebody by raping them or robbing them, or if you kill someone, you can't do anything to them, but their families, their heirs, whoever else, that you should pay restitution. Now, if in the payment of that restitution you are harmed in some way, then that's fine. I don't care if you owe them restitution, right? So if you owe somebody $1 million and that means you basically need to give 90% of your wages for the rest of your life, too bad. That's just how it is. Or if you've got to donate a liver or something or a kidney, that's fine. So, with these, it is interesting that some of these guys, like if you hear like these Hollywood cases where, you say that, but then think about like the guy, what's his name? The Nassim guy in Michigan, in Ingham County, who, digitally raped, hundreds of girls. He got like 800 years. He'll never leave prison ever. So now maybe that was a high profile case and unique in the number of victims and whatnot in the span. But yeah, I don't know. There's different judges. That's one thing. If you listen in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, Mark Richards was asked about this, and he said that Judge Schrader is a really fair judge, but you don't want him to sentence your client. So like he was very fair. He seemed to really make a point to defend Kyle's rights, although he gave the prosecution a lot of leeway. But if Kyle had been convicted, he probably would have gotten like the maximum sentence. He probably would have gotten life, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, I will say there's definitely a push by some groups to normalize like sexual relations between children and adults. Like that's the infamous case is NAMBLA, which I'm not even sure if NAMBLA is around anymore, but there are others who are doing this. And if you watch what's his name? I should remember his name. The cynical theories guy, Helen Pluckrose, and if you look in the neo-Marxism, the critical theory stuff, that seems to have a lot of stuff in there about eroding people's morals and changing the Overton window for the purposes of thinking that will somehow ferment revolution. And that ideology, has more influence in some places. So it has more influence in California than it does in, Texas, let's just say. Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because people say you have to have a government to have like an objective set of rules that apply to everyone, and we have a government and we don't have an objective set of rules that apply to everyone. Not only from different jurisdictions for different people, like Hillary Clinton or the Kennedys, they're not held to the same standards, right? They can kill people. They can kill people and walk away, and nothing gets said or done. Thomas Binger, pointed a rifle at the jury. That's a crime. If you or I did that, we'd get, James Lindsay. That's right. Thank you, Yellow Blue Austrian Watchman. James Lindsay. He's talked a lot about this recently, and there's definitely something to it. I'll be honest too, though. Like, I've known a lot of gay guys, and I don't think I've ever met one who had read Marxist theory or was incorporating it into their thinking. I have met gay men who had pedophilic experiences when they were children. That's relatively common. When I say that, I'm not putting a percentage because I don't know what it would be, but it's more common than people know, because way more people, it happens to more people than talk about it. Let's say that, at least publicly. But I've never heard anyone rationalize it that way, but I think that there are people who do. And some of those people are prosecutors, and some of those people are on school boards, and some of those people are professors. A lot of those people are professors, actually. Are you consequentialist libertarian or natural rights? Both. I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think the consequentialist argument is a lot stronger, but consequentialism has problems too, because at root you have to have some kind of metric to judge the consequences. So there's that. And then as far as natural rights go, like, I have problems with rights, but if you're going to have them at all, a libertarian thing makes the most sense. Everything else gets really counterintuitive and contradictory. Does the Rittenhouse ordeal change your mind about AR-15s, or do you think it would have been better off with a different? Yes. If he had an M1A, Jump Kick Man would definitely be dead. So, there's a huge teaming up between pedos and critical theorists. Sounds conspiratorial. It's borderline objective. Yeah, and I don't know how much is who and how much, like, I don't think most pedos are going to be theoretical. Let's say that. But there are some. I mean, Foucault obviously comes straight to mind as somebody who is theoretical and a straight up pedo, and he's not the only example. I don't know. There's some academics can be absolutely ghastly. I have a good friend who I've implied, he's not gay, he's straight. Amazing guy, incredible person, and I've known him for quite a while, and he's never met his father, and he's got an older brother, and the reason he's never met his father is when his mom was pregnant with him, when his brother was like 1 or 2, his dad beat up his brother, and then threatened to kidnap his brother, and told his mom that she had to pay for his, like, something. He had some kind of massive bill, like his student loans, or else he would kidnap the brother. And so she did, and then he disappeared, and he ran away. And he just completely abandoned his family after threatening them and taking the mom's money. And this friend of mine never saw his dad, but he knows his dad's name, and his dad is a professor at ASU, actually. He's a professor at ASU, and he's well regarded. If you look at his, like, Yelp reviews, they're really good. So this is a popular professor, but he's got a biological son from a family he abandoned and a mom that he threatened and beat. According to my friend, maybe he's all lying. And he doesn't even have that much antipathy because I don't remember him at all. It's just something that happened before, But, like, so they can, I think a lot of professors we all do this to a point, right? We all put on a mask and act a certain way in public, but then behind closed doors, we may not act the same way. It's just the difference is a lot bigger with these professors. If they're a little bit smarter, they can hide things a little bit better, and they feel like they have to put on more of a show. And so, I'm not going to say they're all like rapists or anything, because that's not the case, I'm sure. But, Should we have welfare? No. Should we have public education? No. And these are important questions that can't be swept aside. Well, I'm not sweeping them aside. They shouldn't exist. I mean, welfare is fine if it's private. Welfare is not fine if it's subsidized by taxpayers. All right. Well, guys, we could go on all night. I don't want to stay up all night, though. If you can't tell, I have like a cold or something. I was hoping I had COVID, but I got a test and I don't. Is he a professor of psychology? I believe he's an English professor, but let me check. Boop, boop, boo. ASU faculty. I'm not going to say his name out loud. I know his name, though. That's not him. No. I'd have to look it up again. I don't want to accidentally. I believe he's an English teacher, though. Not psychiatry or psychology. So, yeah, I'm not gonna out my friend though, or his delinquent dad. But he said it was funny. He would like go and he now goes to not Arizona State, but a nearby school, and he's thought about going to see him, but he doesn't. He just doesn't care and doesn't know what he would get out of it, so he hasn't done it. But they all think he's great. All his, oh, he's a great teacher. He's the best. Psych professor at a university next to mine murdered his student and committed suicide. Damn. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, academia is a protected class, so a lot of stuff is able to go on there. Glad to hear the Mosin Nagant hooker guy is doing well. Yeah, so this was all, he would have gotten out of prison or out of jail 2013 or 2014 at the latest. Probably 2013, maybe even 2012. And because that would have happened in 2011 in like January, July. And he had another kid. I remember the day he got his wife pregnant. He came in and she's like, she's preggers. I got it. I'm like, how do you know? I can just tell. And he's happily married, and I think he's got like 5 kids. And he does kung fu, and he's an idiot, but he's happy. That's what they say, like dumb people are happier. He's in that group, but he has his own like wisdom. He's been around the block, and classic case of being tamed by a woman in a good way, because he probably would be dead if it was not for his wife. I think she really like put him on the straight and narrow. Judging by the Chinese airsoft, yeah. I mean, I don't have tactical eyes. A lot of people who watch the videos like, holy shit, he shot a guy in the arm. You never do that. He didn't hit. He's clearly very calm, and that gave him discipline. But as it came out in trial, he's not trained. I mean, he's like an hour of training. That's it. There's also something they put in a motion to have the gun be destroyed, and there's a question of who owns the gun at this point. Technically, it was Dominick Black's, but it was also technically supposed to go to Kyle when he turned 18. But then, of course, it went to trial. So they're saying they want to destroy it. I don't know if they'll actually do that or not, though. Thanks, Jimmy Bauer. Nice to see you, Jared, Richard, everybody. Well, I'm losing my voice, and we already said everything we need to about Dominick Black, but we'll see on Monday. So